We're a few days out from the release of the Fantastic Four First Steps, and despite very positive reviews, a solid box office opening, and much of the fan reaction being largely positive, there's a very aggressive narrative that Marvel wronged director Matt Shakman and cut his movie to pieces. In today's video, I plan on being as spoiler-free as possible, but we'll be talking about the director's cut of Fantastic Four First Steps, director Matt Shakman's response to the director's cut, and why we ended up getting the version of the movie we saw on the big screen. Now, in my first impressions to Fantastic Four First Steps, and even following the announcement that John Malkovich's Red Ghost would be cut out of the movie entirely, I speculated on the possibility of seeing these scenes turn up in a short film shortly after the home release of Fantastic Four First Steps, or possibly an extended cut, and I was fairly optimistic about seeing those scenes reintroduced in some fashion, but I was not demanding them the way a lot of people seem to be demanding an extended cut of Fantastic Four First Steps following the release of the movie. There is a lot of discussion around the fact that certain shots from the trailer weren't featured in the finished movie, and speculation that entire sequences of the movie were completely removed in an effort to make the movie shorter in order to accommodate more screenings at different movie theaters. The running time for First Steps is an hour and 55 minutes. It's a pretty standard thing that Marvel movies normally hover around 2 hours. There are some exceptions where they get 2.5 to 3 hours, but I have to speak from personal experience that I think Fantastic Four is the first time in a little while that a Marvel movie didn't feel very bloated to me. I ran into that issue with Brave New World, Deadpool and Wolverine had a little bit of bloat here and there, and even Thunderbolts, a movie that I really enjoyed, had some scenes that I thought could have been trimmed down a little bit. But a lot of people are having the opposite problem with First Steps. I can understand not really liking the rushed origin and some of the bits in the first act of the movie coming off a little disjointed, but I'm looking at this from the perspective of the pacing of the movie. The opening was a little disjointed and we could have had a little bit more character development in there specifically for the Thing, but I thought the pacing of the movie was so specific and it delivered the point of what that sequence was supposed to be so well that maybe adding additional sequences to it would have made it feel like it went on a little too long. And we know that is the bulk of the cut scenes that people are demanding to see. Last year's leaked Comic-Con trailer had the Thing on a dating show, which is a sequence that hasn't appeared in any marketing for the movie since Comic-Con last year, but over the weekend it was officially released on the Fantastic Four Instagram page. But some of the marketing did feature shots, or in some cases entire scenes, that were clearly part of the second act of the movie, but were removed for whatever reason. And there's a lot of debate on who's responsible for these cuts from the movie, with most of the fingers pointing at Marvel or Kevin Feige. Now, I am adamant about letting creators make the things they want to make, but filmmaking is a collaborative process between writers, directors, producers. Things are going to be lost whether it happens in scripting, filming, or editing, and that's just the nature of the industry. But less than days after the release of the movie, there is already a campaign to get an extended edition or director's cut off the ground for this movie. Something that, yeah, it would be nice to see that additional footage that they clearly shot, but it's not really necessary. I don't think the movie is any worse for not including those things. But something happens when you include shots or scenes that weren't featured in the final movie in a trailer, especially when you have a fan base similar to Marvel or DC. It's how we wound up with things like the Release the Snyder Cut campaign. Because the general public knows that there was more to this movie at some point, the movie is worse because of that. For many people, it creates an incomplete vision, but you have to remember there is a reason why things are cut in a movie. I think the biggest example of an unnecessary deleted scene being added back into a movie comes from the original Star Wars. And if you're unfamiliar, I'll briefly explain. Originally, they had the idea of filming the sequence with Harrison Ford and Jabba the Hutt and creating Jabba as a stop-motion creature. The entire scene was filmed with a human stand-in, but they were running out of time and it was inevitably cut from the movie. And it wasn't really that important of a scene because all of the information we hear in it is said earlier on. However, 20 years later, when they were making the special edition of the movie, it was added back into the movie with a CGI character model of Jabba the Hutt. Now, this was a scene that George Lucas originally intended to be in the movie, but just because it was originally supposed to be in the movie, does its re-inclusion make the movie better? I would say it doesn't. It slows down the pacing a little bit, and if we're talking about visually, the CGI clashes with the 1977 special effects that are in the rest of the movie. Let's go for a more recent example. Avengers Endgame was re-released in theaters with one deleted scene added in with unfinished visual effects. It was a scene after the 5-year jump where Bruce Banner is now Smart Hulk, and it was added to the movie right before his introduction in the actual theatrical release. Again, something that was originally supposed to be in the movie, but was cut because the scene they used was so much better at reintroducing the character. So while I am curious to see what these additional scenes would have been, there was ultimately a reason they were cut, and Matt Shakman has since spoken out about the potential of a director's cut. In an interview, he said there are so many visual effects involved in those scenes that remain unfinished, so that's not possible. There was a lot of stuff to balance in this movie and some things had to go. However, he did add that Malkovich's exclusion was a bit heartbreaking and that he really did crush the role. And the thing is with movies, sometimes additional scenes are really nice to expand on character motivations and character development, but you also have to balance out for pacing, something Matt Shakman talked about. And if there's information in that scene that the audience will need to understand something later, sometimes you can just include it in dialogue. It's faster and it works better to keep the plot of the movie going. Now, he was specifically talking about expanding on the Mole Man plotline and Subterranea, which yes, I did express my disappointment in not expanding on it a little bit, but I will trust Matt Shakman, Kevin Feige, and everybody behind Marvel that its exclusion was to benefit the movie overall. So with all of that being said, Matt Shakman even saying that there won't be a director's cut, I think people need to go back to judging the movie based on what we saw in theaters and not what we expected based on the marketing material. You could hope and dream that an additional scene of Reed Richards and Sue Storm debating the ethics on defeating Galactus would have improved the movie, but we'll never know that for sure. The same way that 10 years ago, when Suicide Squad released, people were adamant that adding in more of Jared Leto's Joker to the movie would have heavily improved the movie overall. But if you've seen that movie and the extended cut that adds in more of those scenes, you know as well as I do that it doesn't improve the movie that much more. It only makes the running time longer. But I think that's all I have to say on this topic. Let's please not make a big fan campaign for this. I have a few minor problems with Fantastic Four First Steps, but overall I really enjoyed the movie and I'm excited to see more of those characters and to see the movie again. But I think that's gonna wrap it up for today's video. I want to thank everybody for watching this far along. Leave a comment down below, let me know your thoughts on this, whether or not you would want to see an extended cut or if you agree or disagree with me. But also, if you enjoyed watching this video, please leave a like, subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next video.